Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and today we'll be taking a look at the lore and story learnings from Overwatch's short story, A Friendly Rivalry. By the Overwatch Narrative crew, it stars all of the Junkers. We discover a bunch about Junkrat and Roadhog's story as they face execution by the Junker Queen in the scrapyard of Junkertown. A fun one this one. I'll be going through all of the Overwatch lore talking points and interesting bits of the story, along with a little light speculation on what new lore we might have learned from it too. Suffice to say, this contains big spoilers for the Heroes Ascendant short story. Now this one's actually released on the Overwatch website if you want to read it, but come back and let me know what you think afterwards if so. Okay, timecodes in the description below if you'd like to skip. Firstly, as always, a quick summary of the story for you. We join Junkrat and Roadhog in chains and imprisoned as they await their fate in the Junkertown scrapyard, the gladiatorial arena of the Junkers. With a conversation back and forth between the two, Junkrat proposes a variety of plans to escape, but is worried at Roadhog's general silence and lack of enthusiasm, before finally being rendered speechless when it is revealed that they are to be executed. Brought before the Queen and the baying Junkertown crowd, Junkrat learns after asking that they are being sentenced to execution for the attempted demolition of Junkertown's main gate, blasting Outback Bill's premium sausage stand to chunks along with some of his favourite customers, and the notorious, as we've heard even in game, biscuit incident, whose details are still a mystery to us. Learning that they're being given a chance solely because the Junkertown Queen found the biscuit incident funny, a fight with the champ, Wrecking Ball or Hammond, then ensues. We see the deadly Wrecking Ball in action. Roadhog takes a huge blow from Wrecking Ball's mech before a grenade from Junkrat and Roadhog's hook combine to slow the ball down and reveal Hammond from the mech, which is the first time anyone's seen him apart from the Queen. With the crowd chanting spin to win and an angry Hammond desperate to make up for lost time, he grapples and spins around the central pillar of the arena before Junkrat with a grenade blows away the central spire and causes Ball to fly off out of the scrapyard. As the Queen jumps in to finish them herself, Junkrat holds the execution at bay and promises to reveal the secret location of the treasure that he's been talking about all these years, which the whole crowd groans at, the Queen included. Revealing that he actually knows how to get through the final door, as it's known, of the Omnium that Junkertown was built on, Junkrat wins the two a temporary reprieve, but only because the entire population of Junkertown begins fighting, trying to grab them, trying to get his head and eye that is the key to unlocking the door with a scanner that he installed. Fighting through the chaos to make sure that she can claim her treasure, the Queen, Hammond, Junkrat and Roadhog set off fighting through Junkertown towards the door, with Junkrat being held hostage at knife point. Roadhog seems fed up of Junkrat. He doesn't want any more of Junkrat's plans, and Junkrat is worried that they're expendable once they give this treasure over, so he asks Roadhog to wait for his signal once they get through the door. As they arrive at the final door, a crowd of wreckers is there protecting it. The Queen charges them solo before losing her weapons, and as Junkrat arrives, she pulls 3 pins from his remaining grenades on his bandolier and throws him bodily through the crowd. Jumping on a swinging Wrecking Ball who's nearby, the two wreak havoc, and in the aftermath of the combat, Junkrat tries to give the signal, but Roadhog does not help him because he's not told him the plan. The Queen holds Junkrat bodily against the optical scanner and the door opens, leaving the Queen, Roadhog and Hammond all in shock. Junkrat and Roadhog are given 30 seconds to leave by the Queen, who gives Hammond just one question. Can he get it flying again? There's your summary. Here's some details I really enjoyed in the story. Firstly, it's cool to see some Junkertown life and the general chaos of society. We know, for example, there are, unsurprisingly perhaps, public executions, that these are obviously decided by the whim of the ruler. The Queen only gives Junkrat and Roadhog this opportunity because she felt that one of their crimes was actually quite funny. Things like the biscuit incident and other such crimes are told about in the environmental storytelling of Junkertown and New Junk City. Now, if you haven't heard the various voice lines that play from the Queen in the scrapyard and other bits of those levels, I'll link you to my videos on those in the description below. And following on from these, in a footnote of this story, we learn a little bit more about how Junkertown society semi-functions, confirming a bit about the factions that we know about. The scavengers, for example, find parts for the demolitionists and tinkers to make things with. The wreckers wreck things, although it says in a helpful fashion, all preceded over by the Queen, who tries to keep these ragtag bunches of people in check. And we've seen a lot about them before, but we get a little bit on Junkrat and Junker Queen's personalities and characters too. Junkrat is of course Junkrat, but the Overwatch narrative crew really have a lot of fun writing him here in more detail. I love it in the fight with Wrecking Ball, for example, when he firstly pulls the pin on a grenade, because he says he's better thinking under pressure, then he thinks of what to do next. Like in his voice lines and other appearances in Overwatch media, he kind of has almost a conversation with himself, thinking through his points as he's talking to Roadhog at the beginning, trying to think of ways out of their situation. And I do love the reinforcement in a comedic sense that Junkrat's story about his treasure that he knows about is actually known hundreds of miles away. Even hermits will know about it, and that's the one thing that they know about him. As for the Junker Queen, Odessa Stone, we've seen a load about her character already. It's good to see her in more action, including her throwing herself into a huge crowd of wreckers just before the final door solo against a huge and very dangerous looking cannon, showing Junkrat and trying to teach him a lesson in how her leadership works and maybe why Junkrat should respect her a little more. People don't always follow her because they're all necessarily loyal, but when the chips are down, she will do things like a mad 1 versus 10 fight, and perhaps lead by example in a way that the Junkers can respect. Secondly, it was interesting to see a bit more of an insight in words and in more detail into Junkrat and Roadhog's sort of friendship or current status of their friendship. It looks like it's under a bit of strain, and I was actually interested to know whether it will survive this story or not. Now, in the beginning, Roadhog, he's a hog of few words, but he genuinely seems pretty fed up and worried. He's already realised they're going to be in a lot more trouble than usual, and probably that they're going to be executed. He doesn't respond at all to Junkrat's plan ideas. When they fight to the death or for their lives, he still has his back. He throws Junkrat out of the way, saves his life at the beginning of the fight from Wrecking Ball's cannons, tells him to keep moving, and takes a Wrecking Ball to the chest, slamming him into the wall, which would probably kill a lesser man, or indeed hog. When the gang escape to try and find the treasure in the chaos at the end, Roadhog actually agrees with the Queen. Apparently he was looking forward to watching Junkrat die. Now, of course, these two have kind of a joking manner, and the whole story has a bit of a joking manner and tone to it, but I think there's probably something in there from Roadhog's behaviour. He seems maybe a little bit more fed up, general tone of lack of patience or more than usual with Junkrat's plans and ideas. Once they've defeated Wrecking Ball and they're at knife point, Junkrat tries to talk to Roadhog, and he just says no more plans before Junkrat even speaks. Now, Junkrat does make the point after this that they are expendable completely after the Queen finds the treasure, after they show her the treasure. So maybe they should do something once it's been revealed. Hog doesn't reply to this, there's no confirmed yes or no, but once the final fight has finished, Junkrat kind of says now, although he's forgotten to tell Roadhog, of course, the plan, and Roadhog does nothing, stares at him blankly. So whether Roadhog would have acted on Junkrat's plan or not, we don't actually know, but there does seem to be a bit of a tone from Roadhog, maybe it's just me reading it, that he's a little bit more fed up with Junkrat than usual. At the end, the two are given their lives, given 30 seconds to get away by the Queen in exchange for the treasure, which seems to be something of great significance, so we'll see what Junkrat and Roadhog get up to from here. Thirdly, it was cool to see Wrecking Ball or Hammond in action and his place in Junkertown in a little bit more detail. Now, it's worth me shouting at this point that this story is almost the first part of a two-parter. There's another story in Heroes Ascendant called Thoughtless Gods, which is a whole Wrecking Ball Hammond story. It's much longer. It goes a lot into his character and his origins and him dealing with his past. Watch out for a video coming on that soon. Wrecking Ball is not brought in for a fight, for a scrapyard, arena, gladiatorial combat, but just for an execution. But this is the Junker Queen giving Junkrat and Roadhog, in her eyes, a bit of a chance. He opens up with cannon fire from his mech immediately, no quarters are being given, literally a fight to the death, and we learn, of course, he hasn't lost a single match, and he never leaves the mech, so no one knows his identity apart from the Queen. When it's revealed, the crowd love it. Junkertown is obviously not prejudiced against a sentient hamster, and with the crowd chanting "spin to win," iconic catchphrase, well, maybe originally perhaps from gambling and slots, but of course Diablo Barbarian, Garen and League of Legends and many other gaming characters since, very iconic of people just playing Wrecking Ball in Overwatch as Wrecking Ball fires his grapple and starts spinning around a fixed point. Junkrat outsmarts him by blowing up his pivot point, sending Wrecking Ball flying out of the scrapyard and beyond. We see that Wrecking Ball has quite a good relationship with the Queen. He's relied on for his engineering skills, as we will see later in his story. But there's good banter between the two. He says that he smells because he fell into a sewer when he flew out of the arena, and he clears the way for the Queen as they go to find the treasure, literally squashing a wrecker with a rifle who is in their way. Junkertown society is chaotic, everyone is infighting and indeed perhaps killing each other. There's no mercy shown by the hamster. So, fourthly, it was very, very cool to see this arc of Junkertown, exploration of the Junkers as a faction, and basically their lore progressing and story progression, not only for Junkrat and Roadhog, but in general, and where this could potentially set them up for next. I think, on reflection, the Junkers are probably the most talked about, covered faction in Overwatch apart from Overwatch, if that makes sense. We have had 2 comics for Junkrat and Roadhog, one when Overwatch launched way back in 2016. We then, of course, had the Junkers origin trailer. We've had the trailer for Junkertown with Junkrat and Roadhog. Of course, we've got the Junkertown level, new Junkertown. We have the Junker Queen origin story and animated short. And although not directly related, but coming in later in the picture, of course, Hammond. In his own next story, he crosses over with the Junkers and Junkertown story too. So yeah, apart from Overwatch and Talon, maybe the Junkers are a strong contender for the most lore outside of those key story pillars and factions. Anyway, we have known since Junkrat and Roadhog's original Overwatch website bios in 2016 that Junkrat knows a secret, and he knows a secret about a treasure somewhere in the depths of the Australian Omnium, which Junkertown is built from the ruins of, as we know. It's joked about in a footnote that absolutely everyone knows about it, as I said before, and when the final door is opened after this entire story, everyone groans in the scrapyard when he says that he'll finally tell the Queen the secret. He is actually telling the truth, and I love this paragraph. The final door slid open with a warm hum, revealing rich, cool darkness. The Junker Queen stepped through, squinting as her eyes adjusted. Then she looked up, and further up. Detecting astonishment, Wrecking Ball's mech said, breaking the silence. Roadhog peered around them, his mask failing to hide his awe. Their collective wonder filled Junkrat with pride, though it was short-lived. You two, the Junker Queen said, gesturing to Junkrat and Roadhog, have 30 seconds to get out of my sight. Just consider yourselves lucky I'm letting you live after the stunt you pulled. Before Junkrat could protest, she turned back to the room, clapping Wrecking Ball's mech. Reckon you can get it flying? So my terrible Junker Queen impersonation aside, maybe I should work on that a little bit. We know that this is a huge flying structure. We don't know precisely what. However, from the first Omnic Crisis, we know that the ships that we've seen in things like Uprising even more years ago than this second Omnic Crisis, when we know now from Ramattra's short stories that he was working with other Omnics and creating these robots from an abandoned, forgotten about Omnium, and indeed causing the problems in London that Tracer and the gang went to go and solve. All of the big flying Omnic ships must have come from somewhere. So I think if we put 2 and 2 together, we don't know exactly what it is. Remember that this is an old door that hasn't been opened for a whole chunk of years, but I think we have some kind of old flying robotic or Omnic ship from the time of the first Omnic Crisis that's been left effectively for scrap. Which leads us nicely to the final thing that I enjoyed and kind of the final point from this story. Well, what's next? Well, it is, as I mentioned, kind of almost a 2-parter. This is a setup in some ways for Hammond's story, Thoughtless Gods. Now there'll be a video on that. I'll cover that in complete detail like all of the other short stories and Overwatch media and lore here soon, so keep an eye out for that. That progresses this main thread a little about this ship or flying object discovery, but really it's around Hammond and the Junker Queen and some of the factions' quests for parts, and then the story and journey that takes Hammond on after that. So we can absolutely have a little speculate about it here. So imagine the Junkers going airborne and taking their story beyond Junkertown. Now, as a slight spoiler for Hammond's story, Thoughtless Gods, they do come upon effectively an Omnic facility with some communications in that show the Junkers effectively that Null Sector is attacking the world, and there's a big problem, with Omnic and Null Sector attacks around Australia and beyond. So in this story, the Junker Queen wants to know if they can get airborne, and then in the next story, Thoughtless Gods, Hammond, the Junker Queen, and the leader of the Tinkers actually discover that, there are problems in the world, there are problems around Australia. Now, a lot of the Heroes Ascendant compilation stories, moving on from the PvE storytelling of Overwatch Invasion, alongside some of it as well, are kind of setting up the world and many of the characters for a big what's next. And I personally love the idea that if the Junkers are airborne in perhaps some kind of big carrier or frigate or ex-First Omnic Crisis warship or dropship or something like that, they could be taking it to the rest of Australia. Maybe the Junkers are what Australia needs to fight back and beat back this new threat from Null Sector. I really get in my head, let's go headcanon, totally speculative here, but drawing from pop culture, obviously the Junkers are very, very Mad Max, post-apocalyptic society, Australia, that kind of vibe. I really just see a huge road caravan, whether it's from any of the original Mad Max films or the recent Tom Hardy one, or even Furiosa recently, which I've still yet to see, but looks really, really good. Can you imagine the Junkers flying around on a giant drop ship and what that would look like? Here's a few screenshots and bits from the Mad Max films as well, just to sort of illustrate my point. But I think that could be really, really cool, both in Australia and who knows, perhaps beyond. Fun adventure with the Junkers in Junkertown, and actually some Heroes Ascendant progression as to where their story might be taking them next. I love the idea of Junkers running around either Australia or beyond, sort of airborne in a convoy kind of style. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you like this video, throw a subscribe, like, always really, really helps, and a share does too. Let me know in the comments what your favourite parts were. We're going through all of the Heroes Ascendant short stories here, so if there's a particular one you'd like to see next, let me know. And check these playlists here for not only the other short stories, but also all Overwatch comics, animated shorts, voice lines, interactions, and all kind of things to do with Overwatch Lore and Story, as well as other games that I've been doing over the last bunch of years and more. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.